Hello and welcome to the LoveThat podcast. I'm Mark, and here with me are my colleagues Charlie and Marcio.
Hi.
Hello.
This podcast is about all things creative.
Specifically the subjects of design, digital and video.
With other stuff thrown into the mix. As well as being able to listen to us, you'll also be able to see us and what we're getting up to on our YouTube channel.
We're currently on our podcast set, which has kindly been provided to us by the University of Portsmouth.
With a big thanks to the CCI department who are helping us to film and record this series.
This time, Marcio, it's your turn in the hot seat. So last episode we talked about the design, conveying emotion and feeling in design. This time it might be a bit harder for you because obviously digital, how would you do that?
Yeah, educate us.
Well, I think it all starts with previous episode with the design, because at the end of the day, when we started with all the digital solutions, like probably late 80s, early 90s, it was everything functional, whatever worked, with the command line to the early days of the internet. It was whatever the information is there, it's fine. As long as people is getting it, it's okay. But now the design is having to influence a lot more because it's trying to get that human relation, as we were saying on the previous episode, it's about making that engaging, and everything is through design. So there's a lot of that user experience and user interface, UI, UX, that you hear so much now. But one of the main benefits that I see is that you can test it, and that's how we approach it, because most of the developers, myself included, are not great designers. I can probably get to a fine design, but it takes me a lot longer than a proper design professional. So what we try to do, and I think what has been working especially with big companies, is A/B testing, trying out a few design elements, trying out to see what works, and testing it, and gather that data, and then apply it accordingly. I think it's always the balance of stick to what is known for and what people is used to, and always to evolve what is actually more natural, what is more instinctive, what feels more human in how to interact with these devices or technology.
How do you, so just thinking about how to interact, how do you define what is a expected behavior? So how someone uses a particular device or navigates through a certain, website journey or whatever, to, when you're actually needing to evolve that or cater it for, say, a different audience group. Say a client needs to engage with an older audience. How do you balance, the existing default functionality into what you actually need to do to cater to a different audience?
Yes, I think it all depends, as you were saying, it's about that audience and that research that you should have done before. Obviously, by the time you get into development, both design, discovery and define should have been already established. So in theory, you shouldn't have those questions anymore. But if you do, you that's why you have like prototype phases now into development, which is something that we've been embracing so much more in the last few years. It's just doing those Adobe XD prototypes, so you can test your design, send it hopefully to that target audience, and gather some feedback, getting some surveys. I think one of the clear examples is when you go to obviously left to right and right to left, just how to read have a massive influence on how to design websites and in anything really. Or if you read up and down or anything, or those languages, I think that's one of the clear examples that everything needs to be changed, because instead of for websites, commonly, rule of thumb, you have your logo on the right, your main content on the left, because people will be reading from left to right and then scroll down. But if you're from a country that doesn't do that, or in a particular audience that doesn't do that, everything needs to be swapped. And now we're seeing it as well with mobile application for mobile devices. Now phones are getting bigger. They're getting more real estate within the screens. So for the regular user, the thumb doesn't usually get to the top of the screen.
My tiny hands.
No. So a lot of companies now are dropping those settings, like menus. Like I think Amazon dropped most of their home orders and buttons to the bottom of the screen, where it's more accessible to most of the people. But I think all of that obviously is being given a solution to a problem that is arising with new screens, or not a problem, but let's say
it's usability, isn't it?
It's usability.
How people use it.
It's usability, but it's been tested.
Yeah.
It's been tested. It's being gathered data to see if it's actually working or not, and depending on that, being fed back into the development team, into the design team to make those changes.
The menu piece, so the menu changing from traditionally that top right down to the center. That's a really interesting one. So my partner, for instance, he did a recent update, and the menu has changed from up the top to down the bottom, and that behavior change has really thrown him. And it's even though that's better for the ergonomics of the phone and how you hold it, he's so the muscle memory is so ingrained in using that top nav instead of a center. It's really thrown him.
Yeah, so you're always gonna get that when you make a change. But the theory is that it's because it's supposed to be a better way to interact. The amount of time that's gonna take you to get used to that change is gonna be a lot shorter than if it was something that doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
But I think Android is a good example because they changed from this has been a few years ago now already, but they used to have the home button, the back button, and the context button that will let you see different apps, to change to a full just gestures navigation, which I think iPhone have been doing for a while since they got rid of the home button. They just went into full gestures. But instead of forcing that to everyone, they gave the choice. I think you get it as an option when you set up the phone, just to make sure that people that don't want to make that jump, they still to something that is familiar.
Yeah.
But as generations go and new people start buying phones, that's going to become the default, and eventually that's going to disappear, the 3 buttons one, because they are gathered data and they're starting. But it's a good way to keep both options available for everyone.
An interesting one is, during the pandemic, our business and how we communicate and engage with communities and the audience was very much face-to-face with a small proportion of digital. So tell us a little bit about the kind of process that you went through to capitalize on digital and help to still communicate and engage with those audiences on a platform that wasn't necessarily first nature to them. It was all about going to a town hall or an event and meeting and speaking face to face, whereas the pandemic took that away.
Yeah, I think in the first days was making sure that whatever experience we had was very familiar to them. So it was about replicating those environments online. Now, probably a couple of years later, it's probably not the best thing to do for that particular medium. Just because you're online, you're on a phone, you're probably not always going to be able to do a 3D view or of a virtual room or a virtual board. It definitely has work in making that information available to that audience that is used to those platforms. But it's something that we're starting to see is a better way to deliver it that is optimized for that particular channel. But the other bit as well is what was lost completely was that human interaction, because you would be able to go to those events and talk to the project lead, talk to the planners, talk to developers, talk to anyone who was particularly interested or involved on the site. You couldn't do that anymore. And I think that's one of the main reasons things like Teams, Zoom, and all of that exploded, because people still wanted to see people.
You still need to communicate with people, even if you're stuck at home.
Yeah. So you started to see those live shots, but you could also have video shots. I think Curry's PC, it's not PC War on Curry's anymore, but it's just Curry's now. You could have a sales assistant.
I saw that the other day on the website.
On the website.
I was looking at a product and it was like, do you want to speak to us about this product?
Yeah, and they will also, if they were in store, and they will talk to you of the product, like, because all that interaction has been lost. You have to do everything by email, and not everyone prefers that, especially because people is more used to getting information through audio or video than reading. Like, people don't read stuff anymore. So we keep talking about that's too much text for it. That's too much copy. We need to reduce that to make it more digestible, more easy to manage. And I think that's one part of the evolution of the challenges that we had to confront after everything had to go to a digital form. How to still keep that connection, the human interaction, without being personal or in the real life.
I think it definitely benefits my area in terms of people don't want to read stuff; they'd rather watch a nice video.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've definitely noticed throughout the pandemic going forward the big shift of work coming in to support on that. Obviously, a big part of it was down to the digital setup that you created or helped produce, and the account managers from around the business are now starting to sell in videos with those digital consultations, which, it's just great.
But I think it's interesting as well because it has a lot to do with the attention span of someone. Like for the videos, for example, that you just mentioned, you can't make a really big video replacing the whole website because that would be too long, and you can't really jump to the part that you're interested in. So it's all about that. And the other thing that has been happening quite recently is applications or mobile apps or even websites trying to replicate human feelings or reactions or what you would find in real life. I think part of the success of platforms like TikTok is because it's so short. The attention span that you need to view a video, so it doesn't require a lot of you, and you also have that discovery phase that you just find something else that's interesting, and then you just find something else, just trying to replicate what you find in normal life of meeting people, just kind of keeping that interaction and wanting to share it.
I feel like people nowadays they don't have the patience for all the fluff.
No.
Obviously social media has been a catalyst, the old word limit that you used to have on Twitter and things like that. I think people want people to get to the point a lot quicker, and it's balancing that and making it still feel human so that it doesn't come across cold, because again, one of the disadvantages of digital can be that it can feel quite cold and unhuman if you don't approach it correctly.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the great challenges you were saying before, that it seems like it's harder for digital to make that emotion connection with an audience because it has to come from videos or from the design, and that is just partly true, but it has to be, there's some clever ways to do it functionality wise. Like, I don't know if you've heard of the dating app called Thursday or something like that.
I'm married, of course I haven't.
Yeah, sorry, but
So are you.
I know, but I just like the different approach that they're taking of it. So one of the big challenges is if someone that is trying to date, it kind of takes over them, and it kind of is completely different to that real life connection that you could make with someone you just meet someone in a bar. So it's basically, you can only connect to someone on Thursdays, so that's your date night.
Oh, is that where they?
That's really
I think I read about this in the paper. No.
Online.
on the electronic paper.
On the line. And it was about, they basically set a venue.
Yeah.
It must be every Thursday that all these single people go to, and then they meet and they can interact.
I think they have in real life events like that, but basically on Thursday they could only message the people that they match or stuff like
That's
that.
crazy.
So it just to try one, just to make sure that people just doesn't get addicted and just go through one of the type less or right, whatever it is, type less, and just keep it a little bit more real and more connection to something that you feel more unique and more special, just to be able to limit the amount of people that you can communicate with.
Yeah.
And that's a prime example of how the technology is trying to replicate a human emotion that you can only find with real people face to face.
Nice.
I mean, my husband won me over on Facebook, so we'd met in person through work, essentially, but it was him messaging me on Facebook and trapping me with a Nando's that now been together ever since.
That is the way to do it. I mean, my situation was very similar to that, but I won't go into details. So I think that probably comes to the end of the digital side of things, Marcio. Thank you. It was really insightful for me and everyone listening, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Maybe?
Touch wood. But now let's go to our segment topic, where we talk about random stuff. Industry or not industry related. And today's topic is about briefs, not your underwear.
Oh,
who calls them briefs?
I made the wrong research.
But about the briefs we get in from clients. So
the good, the bad,
the good, the bad, and what is this?
Yeah.
So what are your guys' experiences with briefs? I mean, I've had some awful ones recently that I can talk about. But
I mean, you have to take them with a pinch of salt, don't you? Because one of the things you've got to remember is that we are the creative experts, and they are the experts in their industry. So to expect them to understand wholeheartedly what we need in order to do our job is unfair. But I mean, it's those classic words that get used, like, oh, can you make it pop? Or a little bit pizzazz.
Just set up.
It's
just set up.
It's
for us. It's for the music choice. Can it be upbeat? And it's like, yeah, sure.
What does that even mean? Like it's sometimes it's like you have to be a mind reader. Like
exactly.
Not
I think those are the ones that are more frustrating for me. Is when they tell you when they don't know what they want and they just let you completely guess without giving you any background whatsoever.
Or they do know what they want, but they're too busy to tell you what they want. So the other day I got an email. Not going to say who it was or client or anything, but it was like, I would just like to film some interviews. And they'll be about 10 minutes long overall. Can you help? And it's like, yeah, I can help, but I need a bit more detail to
filming them on the move?
What the output's going to be, locations, is it more than one day, where are we filming, who are we filming, how long for, do they need a script, all these questions. So, I mean, I guess it's why we have a briefing template that we can send over to clients, which is really helpful.
And one of the kind of the piece of advice I give to the team is that ask the questions, don't be afraid. And if people feel like they're getting impatient by all the questions you're asking, then you kind of just have to grin and bear it, because at the end it will be worthwhile. You will have created something far more fit for purpose by kind of going through that uncomfortable stage.
Yeah, I would probably say give them a call. Like they're
give
getting
them
frustrated.
A call.
Just
pick
give
up
them
a phone.
Find out
yes.
exactly what you need. Otherwise, you're not going to deliver what they want, and they won't come back.
Because sometimes they do struggle to know what they want, and that's what I find more on my aspect is that they're not sure what is that look that they're after. So you need to work with them. You cannot. Those classic questions of if you were a car brand, what kind of brand would you be?
Yeah. My favorite is what dog would you be?
What dog would you be? As long as they know dog breeds, some car brands.
Dog breeds.
But yeah, it's there are questions just to getting out from it, and I more often than not, I think it's getting better as well, because obviously our accounting team is getting better at getting that from the client, and they're quite experienced now.
And to be fair, some clients are getting really good at it. Like the other day, I got a whole PowerPoint deck through, probably like 8 slides of a whole brief. It gave me like the branding information. It gave me exactly like the key messaging they wanted to hit. Video examples of what they liked, and at the end a little bit of a script that they had written out as well, and I was just like, you've done my job. Like, that is perfect.
But then the other part of that is distinguishing what the client wants as to what they need. So sometimes a client will come to you with a brief and they'll say, we want this, this and this, when you start to unpick it, and that's where kind of the way we look at insights is really important, and data is like, we get this is what you want, but is this what you actually need to really fulfill that issue or change that behavior?
Yes, I think part of our job is to question whenever they come like that, because sometimes they do get to our department, especially just looking for that deliverable, just to do that output. They already think they have everything that they need, and most of the time they haven't paid us to do that work for them. So all we can do is just question it and say, are you sure? Because to me, there will be this. We can't make it necessarily because limitations, budgets, and so on. But at the very least, we should question it, yes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's us done for today on this episode. Thanks again, you two, for your input. It was quite an interesting one. I enjoyed it. And thank you guys for listening at home. So in the next episode, we're actually going into my world, going into video. So
we're going to talk about Mark's area.
I'll actually get to speak this time, which would be quite nice. But yeah, if you want to obviously comment or let us know about anything we've discussed in this episode, please do below. And if you're not on YouTube, then get in touch via email at hello@lovethat.co.uk. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.